Hello, I'm Kirsty Young, and this is a download from the Desert Island Discs archive. This edition may be slightly different from what was actually broadcast, but it is the only version we have. It comes from the British Library's radio collection. The recording didn't contain the guests' 8 music choices, so we rebuilt the original show by using discs from the BBC Gramophone Library. For rights reasons, we've had to shorten the music. Full details can be found on the Castaways page on the Desert Island Discs website. The programme was originally broadcast in 1977, and the presenter was Roy Plumley.
On our desert island this week is a very distinguished actor, Sir Alec Guinness. Sir Alec, with what degree of dread would you view a long sojourn alone on a desert island?
Well, I suppose I'd fear for my mental stability. On the other hand, there are times when I've thought I would like to be alone for a long time, so I don't quite know.
How important to you is music?
I'm not musical at all.
Have you studied it? Do you play an instrument?
No, I don't play an instrument. I was put to the piano at about the age of 8, I think, or 9, at my prep school, and after about a year they begged to be taken away from it. And I've never attempted anything else. But I enjoy listening to music very much.
You have your 8 records in that neat little pile there. What is the top one?
The top one is Pete Seeger singing Little Boxes.
Why do you choose this?
2 things. A, it suggests New York, which I happen to love very much, a certain brilliance in the air of New York, which suits me. I mean, I feel terribly well there, and I've had very happy times in New York. And also, I think if I was on my desert island, I happen to like the song very much, I would feel that the words of it justified my existence in being away from civilization as we know it.
And the people in the houses all went to the university, and they all got put in boxes, little boxes all the same. And there's doctors and there's lawyers and business executives, and they all get put in boxes and they all come out the same.
Pete Seeger singing Little Boxes. Now, your present activities, Sir Alec, you're playing in Alan Bennett's excellent play, The Old Country, at the Queen's Theatre. Do you find it difficult to find a play that intrigues you?
Well, I don't think I would do a play that didn't intrigue me unless I was sort of desperate for the cash. I've been very lucky in recent years. And anyway, anything written by Alan Bennett is going to intrigue me before I've opened the cover, because I think he's a very brilliant writer. He amuses me, and he's an historian, you know. He's an extremely knowledgeable creature.
Your most recent film, which we haven't seen yet, Star Wars, is science fiction, which is a brand new departure for you. What do you play?
I don't know what I play. I play some sort of wise old, or allegedly wise old character from outer space. And whether it's way in the past or way in the future, I couldn't tell you.
Did you enjoy it?
I think it's what the Americans call a fun movie. I think it's very exciting and it's marvellous to look at. And yes, I did enjoy it.
I read that it's making more money more quickly than any film ever has before, and as you're on a percentage, that can't be bad.
No, I read that also with the greatest interest.
We look forward to seeing that. What's your second record?
Poulenc's Organ Concerto, with Duruflé at the organ. I only came across this record a matter of about 3 weeks ago, so it's a new one in my life, and I'm kind of mad about it.
An excerpt from the Poulenc organ concerto, the soloist Maurice Duruflé. May we go back to the beginning, Sir Alec? You are a Londoner, are you not?
Yes, I was born in London, Marylebone.
Was there any tradition for the arts in your family?
No, not at all that I've been able to trace.
Did you go to the theatre a lot?
I think I first went to the theatre at the age of 6 when I was taken to Chu Chin Chow. That impressed me a great deal.
Was there any particular occasion when you said to yourself, what that man is doing is just what I intend to do?
Very difficult to sort of be accurate about it, but I think I first fell in love with a performer when I fell in love with Nellie Wallace at the Colosseum in her elastic-sided boots and a funny feather in her hat and the rude noises she made whenever she bent down. And I used to fall off my seat. I laughed so much as a kid at her, and I think that really set me thinking I would love to be able to do that sort of thing.
Was the theatre your first job when you left school?
No, I went into advertising. I wanted to go into the theatre, I just didn't know how to get started. And I was found very kindly a job in an advertising agency, first of all as a copywriter and then layout. I made a mess of it all, and then back to copyright,
Yes.
until I was able to, fortunately, get a scholarship to the Faye Compton Studio of Dramatic Art.
What was your first professional engagement?
My first ever one was, as a student, was on my 20th birthday. I got the job of walking on and understudying 2 lines in a play called Libel at the King's Theatre, Hammersmith, which then transferred to the Playhouse.
Do you remember your salary?
At Hammersmith, I think it was 7 and 6 a week. And then I got £1 a week when I was at the Playhouse.
That was progress.
That was progress. But I only got the £1 a week because I made such a fuss and saying it didn't really help me to live.
What was your next engagement?
The next one was in a play by Noel Langley called Queer Cargo, which opened at the Piccadilly Theatre, for which I got the princely sum of £3 a week to understudy all the leading male parts and to appear as a Chinese coolie in the first act, a French pirate in the second act, and a British sailor in the third act.
Well, to cover all those roles, you were obviously giving them a reduction for quantity. Oh, there's a story that so dedicated were you that for the Chinese walk-on part you shaved your head.
Yes, I shaved the top of my head, and everyone said, oh, it'll all grow much better anyway when you have. Well, it didn't, as you can see.
John Gielgud helped you a lot at the outset of your career.
Tremendously. My debt to him is enormous.
And you played in a number of his seasons.
Well, various plays he did at the New Theatre. I was in his definitive Hamlet in 1934, which is my first sort of really decent, proper job.
Osric, were you not?
That's right, yes. £7 a week. And then the Komsarjevsky Seagull, which Gielgud was responsible for.
And you were at the Old Vic.
And then I, after a couple of years of that, what it was, to the Old Vic under Guthrie's direction, back to Gielgud, then to the Vic again. So it was a largely classical background.
You played in that celebrated production of Hamlet at Elsinore Castle. That must have been an occasion.
That was Laurence Olivier playing Hamlet. That was the first time the Vic had ever gone abroad, and it was played outside in the courtyard of Elsinore Castle. We were swamped out on the first night and had to play in the ballroom of the hotel nearby with all the crowned Scandinavian heads present. But I think the most memorable thing of all that was Lillian Bayliss, who was still in charge of the Old Vic, of course, in those days, had the Elsinore Castle clock stopped, which had never been stopped in hundreds of years. But, I mean, we couldn't have it pealing out during Hamlet's soliloquies. So they all said it couldn't be stopped, but she got it done.
I can imagine her doing it.
Her determination was terrific.
Let's have your third record.
John Williams playing one of 3 Mexican songs by Ponce and arranged by Segovia.
a Mexican song by Ponce, played by John Williams, For You My Heart. You spent the war years in the Royal Navy. Where did you serve?
Well, I went on the lower deck, did my training in Devonshire, and then got pushed around like we all did. I think I even served on 11 different ships in one day. It's true. You move on to such and such a thing, onto it when we went, and having got there, they said, now you move on to that. 24 hours, 11 ships. Then I went into combined operations. That was after I was commissioned, and was in Loch Fyne and Scottish waters for quite a time. Then to the States, was given an LCIL, which was a sort of 200-ton job with a crew of 20, and told to bring it back across the Atlantic. Never knew where I was, and took it into the Mediterranean. And nearly all my war was, or anyway, 2.5 years of it, served in the Mediterranean, and mostly in the Adriatic.
You were, in fact, shipwrecked at one point.
Yes, I was blown from Yugoslavia to a little place called Termoli, which at that moment was just behind the Allied lines. If I got another 5 miles north in this hurricane that was blowing, I would have been shipwrecked behind the German lines. As it was, I only lost my ship, none of my men.
Yes, you all got ashore all right. Now, at the invasion of Sicily, in which you took part, I believe you were the only person, apart from the Supreme Commander, who knew exactly where you were going to land.
Well, I've always maintained that I was the first person to land because I never received the signal. It was a very rough night, mind you. I never received the signal postponing everything for half an hour. But I did know where I was going about 3 weeks before the invasion, purely by accident. Looking at some photographs, all under huge security with my friend Peter Bull. This was in North Africa. And there was a little figure written, 230 or 250, whatever it was, at the bottom of the photograph, and it was near a lighthouse. And I said, what do you think that figure is? That just the yards of film, or what? It was all taken from a submarine, this film.
Yes, these were briefing photographs.
Little briefing things. I mean, no one was to know where we were. I mean, we weren't told. It could have been Greece, it could have been France, anywhere. And Peter said, let's go back on board your ship and turn up the Mediterranean pilot, which we did, and then we scoured through that for a lighthouse of the same height as the figure on this photograph, and we found it, and that was at Cap Passero in southern Sicily, and that's exactly where I landed, right by the lighthouse. So on the way, once I saw, there's my lighthouse, I knew I'd come to the right place.
It seemed
early,
kind of familiar.
Yes. I hope security's better these days.
I do hope so. Your fourth record?
Haydn's Symphony No. 85, La Reine.
Why have you chosen this one?
Well, I love Haydn. I think he's my favourite composer, generally speaking, and I believe that it would help keep me sane. In fact, any Haydn would help keep me sane on my isolated island.
An excerpt from Haydn's Symphony No. 85 in B-flat major, La Reine, on Talderati, conducting the Philharmonia Hungarica. After the war, you rejoined the Old Vic, is that right?
Yes, when it was at the New Theatre, which is now the Albury Theatre.
One of the few things in your career that have come unstuck, as something sticking out from this long cavalcade of successes, there was a production of Hamlet in which you played the part and directed it, and something went rather wrong on the first night. There was a mechanical failure in the lighting, wasn't there, for a start?
Well, yes, that was disastrous, but I wouldn't blame the whole failure onto that. There was a new electronic board had been put into the new theatre, as it was, and that simply went haywire that night, and everything else did too. Scenery whirled away when it should have been coming in, and horrors. I mean, the actor's nightmare. I used to walk to the side of the stage in the middle of a Hamlet soliloquy thinking, I will just tell them to bring the curtain down, and then I will go out in front and explain that we've lost our heads and it's all gone wrong. But every time I kind of got to near the prompt corner, all the lights came right again. So I thought, now we're in the clear. And it went on like that throughout the whole evening. So it wasn't exactly a concentrated job on my part.
No, you just fought your way through as best you could. Well, now, these successes I mentioned, there was the Feydeau farce, Hotel Paradiso, Ionesco's Exit the King, Lawrence and Terence Rattigan's Ross. Dylan Thomas you played in New York, but not here.
Yes. I was asked to do it here. Somehow I had the feeling that it wasn't for British audiences. It was written by an American, and it seemed to me it was a transatlantic play. Very good for there, but, there are certain things that don't transfer. I felt that this wouldn't.
Are there any parts in the classical repertoire that you still feel that you should have a crack at?
No, not really. I mean, I regret that I haven't either seized an opportunity or made an opportunity to play certain things. I mean, for instance, Lear, although I've done it on radio.
Yes. What about Lear?
Well, I think that all those major Shakespeare parts are really for young men or youngish men. I don't know that after 40 or so you can give them the physical power that they need and the vitality that they need. I mean, the fact that Lear is an old man, I think it's fairly disastrous to be elderly and tackle it for the first time anyway. Maybe if you've played it when you're young, you can tackle it again when you're older, but I wouldn't like to now.
What's your next record?
Mahler, Symphony No. 5. What intrigues me about this is a feeling of foreboding and an historical feeling of 1418 war and the whole of the civilization, the beginning of this century, possibly about to crumble. It kind of throws me back to just before I was born, and a sort of a discomfort which maybe I would rather like on my island.
The opening of the Mahler Fifth Symphony, George Schulte conducting the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Many more people, of course, know you through your films than through your stage performances. You approached films with caution, didn't you?
I think I used to be a bit snobby about films when I was a very young actor and thought, well, that's not for me. I did a day's crowd work when I was a drama student, and that was such misery, and herded around and shouted and bullied, with hundreds of other people, and I thought, I'm never going to do that.
Your first film part was one you'd already played on the stage in your own adaptation of
Great Expectations. But that was a totally different kettle of fish. I mean, that was immediately after the war. David Lean and Ronald Neame, who then had the admirable company of Cineguild, which was something of a revelation in British filmmaking.
It was an excellent film.
And it was a splendid film, and that was I was very proud to be in that. I was thrilled by it, and that started me off on a film career in a way.
You went on to play another Dickens part, Fagin, in Oliver Twist. So evil you were nearly banned in the United States, I remember.
Yes, and the Russians walked out of it in Vienna, somewhere.
And that splendid run of Ealing comedies. You were given full scope for your enjoyment of make-up and character playing in Kind Hearts and Coronets. How many parts did you play in that?
8. I was offered 2, and I was on holiday when the script arrived, and it made me laugh so much sitting on a beach down in Saint-Jean-de-Luz, I think it was that. And I immediately cabled back to Sir Michael Balkan, would love to do it, love the script, but why only 2 parts? I mean, 2 seemed arbitrary. 1 or all.
A great economy, too. What was your favourite of the Ealing comedies?
I think the one that as a film, purely as film, which I think is probably a real classic, is The Man in the White Suit.
And, of course, then there were the big ones that you made later, The Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia, both screen classics. You never sold out to films, did you? Even in the days of the big contracts, you were never the full-time contract artist. You kept your independence so that you could always go back to the theatre.
Well, I had a contract to do X many films over a period for the Rank organisation. I also had one with Corder, which I never fulfilled because he died. But I've always been determined not to abandon the theatre. I mean, I think an actor needs to, at least an actor like me, needs to contact an audience and to open his lungs and all those sort of things. And in the film world, you can become very, very small in your work. And maybe I've, made a hash of both. But I've always tried to kind of keep a balance, certain amount of filming to support me financially, and then to do whatever I wanted to do, if I could get hold of it, in the theatre.
Another record, please.
This is Eric Satie's 3 Pieces in the Shape of a Pear. I don't quite know why I've chosen this, except there's a kind of sad coolness and a rather ironical quality, which maybe is in my personality, sometimes anyway. And I feel kind of at home with it.
The opening of Eric Satie's 3 Pieces in the Shape of a Pear, played by Aldo Ciccolini. Now, as an experienced shipwreckee, you know the problems. First of all, shelter. Could you manage something like that?
Oh, I think so, yes.
You are a fisherman, are you not?
I had several years of being mad about fishing, and I still could be, but I have so little opportunity. I live in Hampshire, and not near any water which is suitable. I have far more equipment, weight of equipment, than fish I've ever caught. And alas, I haven't touched it, any of it, for, I should think, about 7 or 8 years.
Would you try to escape? How much of your navigation do you remember?
I remember my navigation was always a bit ropey. I never quite knew where I was. I'd be all right with coastal navigation, I think, if I can keep something more or less in sight, or if it doesn't disappear for too long.
A trip round the islands, all right.
A trip round the islands would be all right, yes.
Record number 7.
Beethoven's Sonata number 32. This, for me, is the tops of everything. I first put it on the gramophone one warm summer night, and sat outdoors with the windows wide open, and the stars were there, and I was sort of dumbfounded by it. For me, it's the greatest sort of spiritual experience in music that I've ever had.
The closing passage of Beethoven's Sonata No. 32 in C minor, played by Daniel Barenboim, which brings us now to your last record.
Compline hymn sung by the monks of St. Pierre de Solesmes, a Gregorian chant. I've been to Solesmes twice, although I've never heard them singing this particular work there. I think this is what I would like to play each evening as the sun went down. It's a wonderful evening chant.
A Compline hymn sung by the monks of the Abbey St. Pierre de Solesmes. If you could choose just one disc of your 8, which would it be?
The Beethoven.
Sonata No. 32 in C minor. And one luxury to take with you to the island.
This can be a kind of just a little personal luxury, can't
indeed
it?
It can. Anything
I have a
at all.
little, a kind of little leather folding job which can contain a photograph of my wife, my son and his family, my grandchildren, and I better not say above all, but certainly would include a photograph of my favourite dog.
Right. And one book, putting aside that usual little list of the Bible and the works of Shakespeare and big encyclopedias.
Well, to begin with, I thought I might like to take Maurice Baring's wonderful anthology, Have You Anything to Declare? But it is a little slim, so I think I better go thicker than that and take the Oxford 20th Century Book of Modern Verse.
Right. And thank you, Sir Alec Guinness, for letting us hear your Desert Island Discs.
Thank you very much for asking me, and rescue me soon, please.
Goodbye, everyone.
You've been listening to a download from the Desert Island Discs archive. For more downloads, please visit the Radio 4 website.